On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. On the third day. That's the way John begins to tell us about this miracle of Jesus turning water into wine in Cana. He's a skillful writer, John, using hints and signs to foreshadow things that are to come. When you read on the third day, a little bell ought to go off in your head about why he's being so specific. Because in the previous chapter, John introduces 3 episodes in Jesus' life by simply saying, the next day, the next day, the next day. Here, the third day, on the third day. See, this is more about theology than chronology, right? What else is going to happen in the Gospel of John in Jesus' life on the third day? Right. He's raised from the dead. So what John is tipping us off to is that the key to understanding this story is to see it from the point of view of resurrection life. So how does it unfold? Jesus and his disciples are invited to a wedding feast. Oops, there's another hint, another sign, because it was long anticipated that at the end of all things, when the consummation of God's union with the world is complete, it's a wedding feast that we're to expect, right? And Isaiah even puts it in these terms. On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will make for all peoples a feast of rich food, a feast of well-aged wines, of rich food filled with marrow, of well-aged wines strained clear. And he will destroy on this mountain the shroud that is cast over all peoples, the sheet that is spread over all nations. He will swallow up death forever. Then the Lord God will wipe away the tears from all faces, and the disgrace of his people he will take away from all the earth. In other words, this story anticipates that promised time when poverty will be banished and shame removed once and for all, because God's will at last be done on earth as it is in heaven. When the wine ran out at the wedding feast, then, we're supposed to see this as a picture of a world that is passing away. And when the water is turned into wine at the wedding feast, we're supposed to see that as a sign of the world that God is bringing to pass. See? Now, having been the father of the bride twice, the father of the groom once, and having been to more wedding receptions and wedding rehearsal dinners as a pastor than anybody in this room probably, I can tell you that this scenario is a nightmare, right? Filled with dread for the host. The shame of running out of wine could only mean your family isn't capable of fulfilling its obligations of hospitality to all the guests who would come to an occasion like this. Weddings in Jesus' day were big communal affairs. And if you don't believe me, just think about the fact that Jesus and his disciples were invited to this wedding, and Jesus and his mother were from a town 9 miles away, all by foot, of course, right? They're traveling. And the disciples from the north shore of the Sea of Galilee, which was 16 miles away. When people came to these weddings, they stayed. It was like 3-day affairs generally. And that calls for lots of wine, don't you know? Well, now the world we live in, like the world they were in, is always concerned with limited supplies. We think about how we can get ours because we're sure there's only so much to go around. We assume a scarcity mentality, and we're afraid of getting caught without. It's like one big game of musical chairs, where we're all afraid that when the music stops, we're going to be the one without a place to sit, and we will be left out. Now, some of you in this room remember the Great Depression. Almost everyone who lived through that as children continued for the rest of their lives to fear the possibility that they would run out of things. My grandmother on my father's side, oh my, she would have loved the internet and Amazon. But she had a television and a telephone, right? And anytime a Ronco commercial came on TV, she was dialing it up and ordering whatever it was that they were selling, and then when it came, she would be sure to pack it away, store it away. In fact, her house had 3 sheds in the backyard. She had a basement, a garage she could barely get a car in, a porch, a sunroom, an attic, all stuffed with stuff, floor to ceiling, much of it unopened, put in boxes and stored away in case she ever needed it, right? The wine running out is a metaphor for poverty of any kind and the shame that attaches itself to it. Some of us, have more houses than we need, more cars than we need, more clothes than we need. We have more access than others to health care and quality education. And we know somehow in our being that this can't be God's dream for the world. For there to be a situation where some have so much want and others plenty. And who will sound the alarm about this? I was in a meeting the other night with some black pastors in Dallas from South Dallas. One of them said, of those of us who live in North Dallas, you have to understand that they really don't know how bad it is for those of us who live in the Southern District. We pride ourselves in Dallas on our prosperity, but our poverty in this city is as severe as our wealth is great. And we in North Dallas don't see it often because we don't deliberately put ourselves into proximity of pain, right? We were in this meeting, and it was being held in a neighborhood church that I dare say most of us would not ever choose to go to. Right? It's a reflection of the fact that Dallas leads the nation. Don't we love it when we lead the nation? Yeah, not so much here. In inequality. That is to say, an Urban Institute study a few years ago showed that between 2008 2008 and 2013, during that period of extraordinary economic recovery in our country, Dallas came in dead last of major cities in America. 274 out of 274 in terms of sharing of prosperity. So whatever the category, whether we're talking about income or we're talking about education or healthcare or job opportunity or code enforcement or crime, people live in extraordinary want in the very face of extraordinary plenty in our city. Well, we'll be hearing a lot about Martin Luther King's dream this weekend, but I tell you, his dream for America was nothing more or less than God's dream for the world. And God's dream for the world is what the Christian faith is all about. And that Christianity is future-focused. It's not about figuring out how to just adjust ourselves to the world as it is and then waiting it out so that we can finally be blessed once we're in heaven. It's not about glorifying some ideal past and getting back to the good old glory days. I was in New York City last weekend to receive a great honor. I was inducted into my high school football Hall of Fame. And I've been looking for a moment to tell you about it. That was a great day. We had a banquet and told stories. I heard things about myself that I had forgotten or never even known. Apparently, I was pretty good back then. Many of my teammates were there to help me celebrate. We reminisced about the glory days, about the city championship game of 1972. 1972. That was 47 years ago. And for some in that room, I'm afraid it was the high point of their lives. I had this strange feeling about it all. I was happy to renew my friendship with my teammates and coaches and friends. By the way, some of those guys got old. You know. But what I'm trying to say is that I realized how uncomfortable I was with going back so much, how future-focused I have become. And I think it's because of what we do here every week together. I think it's because we keep reminding ourselves that the gospel is good news about what is to come, about how it's more and better, about Jesus' unending supply of the wine of life that he wants to bring to the world, not just for ourselves, but for everyone. This is the good news of God. This story of Jesus turning water into wine shows us that abundance, not scarcity, is the direction of God's rule in the world. And it's an invitation for us to join God in bringing it to pass. All over the world, though, we see fear playing havoc with our politics. In Great Britain, the people voted for Brexit in 2016. The main concern was that being part of the European Union had relaxed the borders and allowed too many foreigners to come into the United Kingdom, thus threatening jobs and putting pressure on the economy. In our own country, it's the same thing. Globalization is viewed by many as a threat to our way of life. Our government shutdown right now is on the one hand, the idea of funding a wall on the southern border, but it's really about this fear that there won't be enough for us if too many people are allowed to enter the country, and we have to share the resources. We're afraid of the wine running out. And we're afraid because we don't realize that Jesus is here and it's going to be okay. You know. Notice who notices what's really going on in this story. It's the mother of Jesus. She isn't mentioned by name. In fact, when she pulls Jesus aside to tell him they have no wine, he responds by saying, "Woman, what concern is that to you or me?" Right? Well, everything, of course. But the point is that John, I think, wants us to see that it's the woman who sees the problem, and that Jesus listens to her. Listen to the women. Believe them. Take them seriously, people. Jesus does. Thank God we don't have that problem today, right? There's probably another reason she isn't called by her name. John wants us to see that she is a figure for the church. It's not Mary as Mary who notices and does something about it. It's Mary as the church who notices and does something about it. It's Mary as the church that is paying attention to loss and shame and inequality and then interceding with Jesus to do something about it. Well, Jesus listens to her, as he does to us when we call upon him. He lets himself be acted upon by us, to be changed by us. He allows our prayers to change him and move him to act. Isn't that extraordinary? Jesus tells his mother that his hour has not yet come, that his time to be revealed as the Son of God is not yet. But she is persistent and essentially tells him that it is. Now is the time, Jesus. We all need mothers like that, right? I have one. They don't even answer, he doesn't even answer his question about what concern the wine is about running out to him or her. She just directs the servants to do whatever he tells you because she's bold to act on behalf of others in need. Right? I can't tell you how often people who see the problems of our society and cry out about it are silenced and ignored. Now is not the time. Be quiet. Go through proper channels. 10 days ago, some of these black pastors I told you I was meeting with were invited to help kick off the Martin Luther King Jr. celebration in Dallas by laying a wreath at City Hall. And they decided that they just couldn't pass up the moment. That honoring Dr. King was not about pretending that everything is now fine when it's not. And so they launched into a list of demands of the city council to address the systemic inequities in Dallas. They rightly claimed that you can only honor Dr. King properly when you take up his same concern for racial and economic justice. And immediately they were criticized for their bad form, that this wasn't the right way to go about things. Instead of dealing with the fact that the wine is running out, people want to focus on polity and politeness. You know, as if the gospel is all about just being nice. King was thought to be a troublemaker in his day for calling attention to the fact that the wine was running out, right? And today we want to make King into a symbol of peace and reconciliation, and we don't want to remember him the way he told us to remember him, and that is as a drum major for justice. Well, the mother of Jesus sees and speaks. She identifies with those in need and wants Jesus to do what only he can do. And what Jesus can do, he does. He brings justice. He closes the gap. He fills the need. But he does more than bring justice. He brings joy. Justice and joy. When the water becomes wine, it's shocking, not just because of this new massive supply, but because of its quality. Exquisite abundance, sweet excess. Not just more, but better. You have saved the best wine for last, the steward says. Jesus, see, he looks around, he tells them to fill the 20 to 30 gallon jugs there with water. Those water jugs served the ritual hand washing that went with any Jewish celebration. What are we to learn from that move? If not, that Jesus transforms religion that has been used to purify people from the problems of the world into a religion that transforms the world. See? You can always tell how and where Jesus has been at work because he doesn't just restock the bar, he raises the bar with a taste of the best of life. So if you're running on empty today, I'm telling you, Jesus is here for you. And if you're running on empty today, I'm telling you, we're here for you too. The church is going to bug Jesus to do it again and again and again. And critics can chirp all they want, but it's going to be more wine and better, Jesus. Only the best, which of course is Jesus himself, for you, for me, for everybody. Amen.